Good evening, and welcome to our author series, sponsored by National Louis University's Library. And thank you all so much for coming out in this bitter cold. I'm Carol Cable, one of the librarians here at the Chicago campus. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge the library's outreach committee for putting this all together, and especially our in-house baker, Linda Lawton. Thank you. I would also like to thank the Institutional Advancement Department here at NLU for streaming this presentation out live, making it available to thousands of people. Millions. So thanks to Kimberly, Rob, and Arturo. We really appreciate it. Today we are presenting authors Kristen Lems, Leah Miller, and Tenena-Soro, who will discuss their book, Teaching Reading to English Language Learners, Insights from Linguistics. And I want you all to know that books will be for sale for $25. Dr. Kristen Lems is professor in the ESL Bilingual Education Program at National Louis University, where she directed a 5-year grant from the U.S. Department of Education in ESL teacher education in DuPage County. I think I have to put my glasses on.
I'm going to take mine off.
Print gets smaller. Her doctoral dissertation on adult ESL oral reading fluency won a finalist award from the International Reading Association for Outstanding Dissertation of the Year. Dr. Lems spent 2 years as a Fulbright Scholar in Algeria doing in-service training of post-secondary EFL teachers and wrote a book on EFL methods for the Peace Corps. She is also a professional folk singer and sings for children in schools and libraries in several languages, including Farsi, which she learned teaching in Iran. Leah Miller is assistant professor in the ESL Bilingual Education Program at National Louis University, where she serves as coordinator, and also teaches graduate linguistics courses at the University of Illinois at Chicago. She is on the board of Illinois TESOL/Bilingual Education, where she heads its awards committee and serves as a consultant on issues related to ELL assessment and the WIDA standards. She has presented at numerous conventions, meetings, and other prestigious venues. She has a keen interest in content area ESL and linguistics, and, along with Kristen Lems, co-directed a Department of Education grant in ESL teacher education. Besides reading research, Ms. Miller's passions include spending time with 4 grandchildren and Jervis the cat, reading dictionaries, and doing lots of other things. Dr. Tenena-Soro teaches courses in linguistics, cross-cultural education, foundations, and reading for the ESL Bilingual Education Program here at National. He has also taught courses in ethics and philosophy, linguistics, and social science at Columbia College, Northeastern Illinois University, and Northwestern University. Dr. Soro's dissertation included a linguistic analysis of his native language, Sabari? Shabari, thank you, and he is proficient in 6 additional languages. He has presented on linguistics and ESL linguistics and ESL topics at state and national conferences, including TESOL and the American Educational Research Association. And in 2008, he received the Outstanding Adjunct Faculty Award from National Louis University. In addition to teaching, he is a serious student of yoga and meditation. Please join me in welcoming our authors.
Thank you very much, Carol Cable. We are thrilled to be doing this presentation this evening, and especially because we know that we have an audience out there in cyberspace. Hi. We're glad you're safe and warm at home, and we're very pleased that you can tune in as well. In addition to thanking those of you in the library, we also want to thank the Development Department of National Louis who helped organize the live streaming feed, and so thank you very much to all of you. We're going to be moving around, and each of us will do part of this slideshow, but I guess it starts with me, so here we go. Here are our thanks. We want to give special thanks. That little lady over there, Linda Lawton, who organizes all of these. And she is basically an amazing organizer. She bakes the brownies, and she sets everything up, and it's just, we really appreciate you, Linda, very much. Well, there we are. Why don't I forward this while you talk a little bit about it?
There we were on Memorial Day, Labor Day weekend, okay, 4 o'clock in the morning, we had to have, you're not the only ones to do things at the last minute, right? We had to get this in the mail that following Tuesday, which was, so we had worked straight through for about 20 some hours editing and putting things together and before we sent our baby off. And so, yeah, we looked a little strung out, a little mad. Back there was when we were editing. We edited and edited, working many hours at the North Shore campus. And we wanted to thank our students. Our students have given us a lot of input into what they want in a good book for, for reading. This is kind of a weird combination of reading and linguistics together. And we've had, as all of you know, your NLU students are the best, right? So we've had a lot of great input from our students, and we really appreciate it. And many of us, former students, continue to send us things and say, thought you'd like this for your next book. So thank you, everyone, and thanks for coming tonight. These are the students that were actually cited in our book for putting in mainly classroom activities that they do with their children. That's Jervis. Jervis the cat, I wish. So, who's doing the big ideas? Oh, I'm doing the big ideas, okay. What we're going to do is just give you a little overview about how the book's put together, and then we will break it down. Our first chapter, our first 2 chapters are based on that awful T-word theory. Where you have to learn a lot about the theory of reading, the theory of second language acquisition, the influences of your first language on learning to read and write in English. Oracy means listening and speaking. It's a very fundamental basis for becoming a good reader in any language. We talk a lot about orthographies, which are the spelling and writing systems of different languages, and how that really affects ELLs who are already literate and may or may not have used the Roman alphabet as we do in the most of the Western countries. So it's a very important variable for being literate in a second language, being literate in English. Morphology is how words are put together. This is my favorite chapter. I think maybe Tenena's too. I'm not sure, but we both like morphology. And so Kristen's okay on it. And that's what morphology is, and how you put little morphemes together and get new words or different words. Tonight we're going to do word formation because it's probably our most fun chapter. And you'll see what that is in a minute. L2 fluency is, of course, fluency is a big issue with all readers, and it's particularly an issue with ELLs because they tend to read slower. And so we have, suggestions of why this is the case and and how to accommodate for ELLs learning and even being proficient readers, what their fluency is going to be like. You can do everything you want. You can decode, you can read fast, but if you don't know what you're reading about, then the whole thing is a waste for you. You know, you don't get anything out of it. That's what comprehension is. What are you getting out of what are you reading? And the last one is learning to write for your own purposes and for academic success, and it's geared towards writing with ELLs. So that's the 9 chapters in our book. This is what it looks like. Now what? Okay.
So here we go. This is kind of an overview of Chapter 6. We have had a great deal of fun putting this into a book. And, you know, our students are constantly writing us and saying they thought of us when they saw some new word. And there are so many ways that you can make new words in English. And these are just an example of some that appeared on the internet. Probably they change so fast that even though Sudoku might have looked exotic to us a couple years ago, now it's a routine word. We just know it as an English word because it's a puzzle that so many of us do. It's a Japanese word. How about chocotherapy? Anybody practice chocotherapy? Possibly? You don't need to have heard the word to figure out what it means because you just know the choco, morpheme, and you know therapy. You put it together and then you get a new meaning in your mind. And that's what we're able to do in English, which makes English such a rich, generative language. Words are able to come in so easily, and we're able to recognize what they mean. But we want to make sure ELLs can also figure out what these new words mean. Let's just look at one more on this page. What would be how would you pronounce that, first of all?
Potatoes.
Potatoes. Potatoes. Now, how did you know that? What does that remind you of that made you say potatoes?
Faux fake.
Faux.
Faux. I just know faux.
You know,
Like
faux.
fake fur.
Faux fur, faux pas, etc. So we know that there's something false or fake, and then so when we see it with potatoes, we immediately know it's some kind of fake potato. So all the time we are sort of evaluating new words that come in and kind of making good educated guesses about what they might mean. And we're going to show you what some of them mean that will help you later. Here are some that we've seen in the last day. Right? Kimberly Michelson, who helped organize this evening, pointed out that she's heard all of these in the last 2 days. How would you pronounce this, do you suppose? Snow OMG, snow, my God. But maybe when we finish our presentation tonight, you'll not only know that you understand these words, but you might be able to figure out what kind of new word formation in English they represent. So there are a dozen ways to make new words in English we're going to show you this evening. And if you speak another first language or another second language, you'll find that you'll think of examples of these same word formation types in other languages too. Here's the first one, and it's called coinage, when you coin a term. Also neologism. A neologism or coinage is when a completely new word is made up from scratch to suit certain purposes. And of course the creative departments of the drug companies and the car companies are working overtime to always come up with just the right new neologism. Often they're invented by companies that have a new product. So very often they don't have any recognizable root at all in them. They're just brand new. Xerox doesn't look like anything that has to do with copying, but now we say, I'm going to go Xerox it, even if it's not a Xerox machine. Vaseline, formerly called petroleum jelly, that's right. So that when the generic one comes out from the drugstores, they can't call it Vaseline because that's still the company name. They call it petroleum jelly. Kodak, Kleenex, Band-Aid, nylon, all of those miracle fabrics from the 1960s, Orlan, rayon, nylon, all of those invented. And the lon really doesn't mean a thing, but we sort of see enough of them and then you think maybe it has something to do with fabric. And a cute little story about Kodak I'm going to let Leah tell.
So we thought Kodak was kind of a weird word in a way, and we didn't know if it came from the Kodiak bear or if it really was a made-up word or where it came from. So I got on the internet, you know, our source of all knowledge, and it's actually really quite interesting. Eastman, who invented or created the first little Kodiak camera, this one, some variation of that one, okay, like the letter K. So it just shows you that other people do bizarre things besides read dictionaries too. So when he came up with his project, okay, came up with this camera, they said, well, we need a nice name, a good catchy name for it. He said, well, I want a name that starts with K, because that's my favorite letter in the alphabet. And we are putting this out. And so somehow they figured out that Kodak, the letters all came together really well and sounded nice. So that it has that name simply because Eastman liked the letter K. So that's the story.
Most words have very interesting provenances if you look into them, and weird. Okay, number 2 is borrowing from other languages. Words are created by borrowing from another language and incorporating them into English. Sometimes the original meaning is altered, and the pronunciation may also change. When words were borrowed long ago, it may be hard to recognize that they were ever not part of English. Here are some examples. Every once in a while you hear this pronounced tortilla, but I think for the most part, certainly in Chicago, we all know this word. I think some of the first words that come in are food words that we try out and we enjoy in ethnic restaurants. Coup de grace, this is very interesting. Anyone know French and tell us what that word means literally? It's the blow of grace, the death blow. When the sword comes down and the head comes off. And we do use that to mean the final stroke or the last laugh or whatever. Often, though, we do mispronounce that and say coup de grace because we sort of think that the last consonant isn't pronounced in a French word. But in fact, in this particular word, the French pronunciation is grâce. It would be pronounced. So it's sort of half anglicized and half still French. And that's often the case with borrowed words. They still retain some of their foreign pronunciation, but they've been kind of adapted and anglicized as they come into English. Carnival comes from Latin. Alcohol, Leah, I'm going to let you tell this one too.
Alcohol has a really interesting history. This form comes from an Arabic word, but before it was an Arabic word, it was a word in Egypt that meant magic, and then it kind of migrated over to the Arabic countries, and they associated it, I guess, with a drink that makes you feel magical, and it kind of took on this name. But it has traveled all over Europe in various forms. It went into English as alchemy, which is turning metal, lead, or something, copper, into gold. And so alchemy, alcohol, you can still see that mystical, magical connection with it. So it has had a very long and interesting history, and it's interesting to trace it. It's a very old word in the language and just a very old word in general.
One of the clues that a word has come from Arabic is that al, which means the in Arabic, and there's so many Spanish words that have al at the beginning because of the influence of the Ottoman Empire in Spain. And then espresso, kudos, panache, pasta, all of these are words that become commonplace after a while, and they don't feel like borrowed words after a while. Here's a Clark Street restaurant, an eatery, and there's 2 borrowings here. We've got both grande and we've got sushi. So I guess that means if you go to this restaurant, you get a lot of sushi. So then it's got the little icon of a person with the chopsticks to show you that's kind of a chopstick-friendly place. This is right across the street in Millennium Park, or in South Grant Park, I guess. At Grant Park South. Boulevards, it's a French word, meaning a kind of street. And this is downtown Evanston. Kind of a spoof on the umlaut of German, so we're seeing the word über come into a lot of wordplay in English, meaning the over whatever. The Uber moms are the moms that are constantly hovering. They talk about the helicopter parents that are kind of always watching their kids. And so these guys decided they'd have an Uber burger. And they've got a new Uber burger. And they've even got a super chili. So they're kind of playing with it. And, you know, if you know German, you get a couple laughs out of it. And if you expect a very exceptional burger. Is it borrowing or is it theft? We don't just borrow words. On occasion, English has pursued other languages down alleyways to beat them unconscious and rifle their pockets for new vocabulary. And one of the reasons that we accept so many new words in English is that we don't have an academy telling us that this word is in or out, it's allowable, or it's, you know, it doesn't have a family tree to it. It's kind of democratic. If words get used enough, they're in, and if they don't, they're out. Compounding is one that most of us are familiar with, and a lot of kids are taught about compound words in school, but it's not usually taken as far as it could be. When a new word is composed of two free morphemes, in other words, each of them alone is also a word, and they're put together to create a new meaning. So we have a lot of words like these: buyout, spyware, ringtone, free fall, makeover, turnaround. You hear that most of those are strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak. There's a tendency for these compound words to get a changed stress pattern, so that when you have the word white and house, it's going to be I live in a white house. But when it becomes the president's residence, it suddenly becomes White House, and the stress moves to the first position. There are a lot of compound words, and they create any amount of stress in classrooms because kids are not sure how to spell them. Sometimes they're two distinct words, sometimes they're hyphenated, and sometimes they're simply pressed together into a new word. And so you have questions like, what is it? Is it jet-like with a space in between? Does it have a hyphen? Or is it a single word? And I think if you have two short words that are compound, over time they probably do kind of press together. But if you have two longer words to make a compound word, it kind of looks complicated to see them pushed together so they retain their opposite. But you can see the trend over time that as they become more commonplace, the hyphens fall out, like email. Email used to have a hyphen. Remember the good old days when email had a hyphen? Now we've got e-books and email, and also same things happening with iTunes, iPod, iPad. And I think the I just means some Apple product by now. So we see things like this. This is a compound. If you drove down the street and saw that, you would have no idea that there were any food involved in this at all, would you? What is it? Is it a subway station? But we know that it's Subway sandwiches. So first they took away the sandwich, then they took away the Subway, and now you're left with a foot long. And you're simply supposed to figure out that it's the description of the Subway sandwich that is a foot long. But it's just called a foot long. Blending is the fourth, sometimes called portmanteau words. A new word is created from blends or parts of morphemes in other words to form a new meaning. And here are some examples. Maybe Leah can go through these while I'm queuing up the video.
So, who knows where brunch came from? Breakfast and lunch. Great, okay. Prequel means before the sequel, right? Sexting? Did I say it right? I think we know what that means, right? Reaganomics was who? Our president, former President Reagan, and his economics. Great. Guesstimate, we use that one a lot. Guesstimate means to guess something instead of estimate. Same idea, but guesstimate means you really don't know for sure. Bankster, is that a person at a bank?
A gangster working in a bank.
Oh, a gangster? It's been a long day. A gangster working in a bank. See, I can't remember, okay? And indie rock is rock music that's done by a band that's not affiliated. Not at, maybe in India too, but I don't think so. And this cute little labradoodle is a cross between a poodle and a lab. Okay. And now, are you ready to do Mictionary? Okay.
Complain.
Maniac.
Complainiac.
Relationship.
Replace.
Relationship. Fantasy.
Can't.
Fantasy.
Food.
Mood swings.
Food swings.
Fab.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Radar.
Weird.
Weirdar. Benefits.
Friend.
Benefriend. Mixed.
Dictionary.
Mictionary.
These are such fun, and there are so many of them. You see blends all over the place. Groupon's really a great one, and now we've got this multi-billion-dollar company that just 6 months ago, if you saw Groupon, you'd say, what's that? And now we all know. Here's one I just photographed of my student last week. It's a great blend. A mathlete. Here's a funny one. We all know what a duplex is, right? But what is a simplex? It must be smaller than a duplex, because we think of duplex as two of something or other. And a simplex, well, it says that it's just 2 bedrooms. So who knows, when the realtors got hold of this, I thought it had something to do with herpes, but maybe I've forgotten. It's not a medical term anymore. It has a whole new application. So there's a lot of creative language play going on all over in advertising and everything else. And this is sort of a fantasy of how a certain word might have been formed way back before time began. Maybe you'll recognize him.
Did you ever wonder where words come from? Why do we call a spoon a spoon? A cup a cup? The answers are as exciting and as boring as the words themselves. You're about to see, dramatized before your very eyes, the creation of a word. It all took place in a primitive, rock-strewn clearing many, many years ago. And so, thanks to early, irritable man, a word was born. The word grouch. Try it on the next nasty, rotten-tempered person you meet.
So there we have grouch. It's apocryphal, of course. Sometimes these blends just don't make it, and this would be an example of one that tried, but I think failed. Somehow or other, we don't like 3 consonants in a row like that. And Kolst did not make it. It was not the people's choice. This is a cute one. Laz. Everyone knows this one. And that's so cute because it immediately reminds you of who the stars of this are. I like this. It's not just another liquor store. It's a liquorama. So kind of reminds you of panorama, right? Panorama. So it means just a huge variety. And just by that AMA there on the end, it kind of gives you the idea that it's really something special. This one I just clipped from a screenshot a few months ago. We've never heard the word before, but now we all can figure it out. It's a flightmare. You don't want to be on one of those. Here's another one. Captured this one in Indiana. Autism Palooza. So, what do you suppose happens at an Autism Palooza? Well, I guess we all know Lollapalooza, so a palooza must be a big event of some sort, some kind of celebration or whatever. So you put other stuff on the front, and so you come up with this strange kind of blend or a strange kind of compound. It's a blogversity. Kind of awkward, but you do know what it means, don't you? You just know. It's the anniversary of a blog. Anyone know what this stands for? This is clipped. This is a blend, rather. Anyone old enough to know, before it was unwanted email, it had another meaning, and it was this first kind of canned meat. And what was the canned meat actually made of? Ham is part of it. What's the other half? What? You got it. Spiced ham. Yes, that is what Spam actually is. It's a blend of SP and ham. Okay.
So the next group we're going to look at are what we call clippings or clipped words. They're words that start out in a long form, and then because we are inherently lazy when we talk, we get them smaller and smaller. So this is a list of them. Pro could be what? Professional. Okay. Prof. We all know what a prof are. We got three of them right here, right? Professors. Glam. I like that word. That's a kind of neat word. It means what, everybody? Glamorous, right. Glam is glamorous. Op-ed. An op-ed is what? In the newspaper, right? It's an editorial that gives an opinion. You find them in the New York Times. This is where I think that word actually probably came from. Lab. Laboratory. No one says, I'm going to the laboratory anymore. I'm going to lab, right? Some of these, you know, the long form is still around, but we just don't use them very much. Zoo's another one. How many? It means zoological garden when you talk about zoo. So zoo, hardly anybody says zoological when they're talking about the zoo. Meds for medicines. Promenade, I think, yeah, it comes from a promenade, and I think that has something to do with when girls were 16 and they would bring them out and introduce them to society, and then they would have a dance. Cred is credible. You have your, you know, you're believable. Somebody thinks you're believable. Credentials, yeah, I have the credentials. I can't remember myself. Gym is one that nobody uses. The real word, the long word, which is the long word. Gymnasium. We never say, well, it's in the gymnasium unless we're talking maybe at school. But gym is just has almost taken over gymnasium. Exam is almost taken over examination. Big pharma is, what is a big pharma? Pharmaceutical company, right. I think, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that a new one?
Pharmaceutical lobby.
Yeah, pharmaceutical lobby, yeah. You can also take off at the beginning of the word, such as in phone, started out as telephone, we knocked off the television. We did it the other way. We put TV, we went to tele-TV, or the middle of, or part of the beginning like in blog, okay? So these are these, and this is a new one, okay? The Hawks, what's the Hawks' full name? Black Hawks. So first, Black Hawks was compounded, right? You had black and hawk, and put them together, so you have Black Hawks. And then now you shorten it, you clip it by just calling them the Hawks. And in Chicago, everybody knows what that is. Absolutely, right? This one is a funny one. Manny and Petty. Mani is your fingers. I don't know. People say that. I'm going to go get a mani. I get, okay. And pedi, I have heard that. It means I'm getting a pedicure. All right, so those are clipped words. This one is the top one is an interesting one because it has this word perms. How many of you have ever heard someone say, I'm going to go get a permanent? Yeah, it's like about 3. It's just about gone, right? So most people say, I'm going to go get a perm. Okay, not a permanent for your hair. This one down here is a really interesting word. It's a tux, right? But what's interesting about this one when you look at it? Does anybody notice the interesting? The bow tie, and everyone knows that bow ties are what usually is more, are worn with a tuxedo. Yeah, there's the bow tie. Yeah, and then the little thing underneath it, tuxedos have that funny little, I don't know what they call that thing in the front, where you have to use these big pin-like buttons, and that's what the button thing is. But what that really is, underneath it, it's Men's Warehouse bought out a tuxedo company, a store, Jade, and then took that Men's Warehouse, put it in the logo to look like a tuxedo bow tie, and they came out. This is a very clever one. Very clever. So that one. This one, I think, has another kind of interesting one. The camo, what is camo a clip from? Camouflage, right. So to make hair coloring, a little bit more masculine when when women would use. So they associate camo with camouflage. And instead of dyeing your hair, coloring your hair, you camouflage the gray or whatever. So that's an interesting one that they clipped out too and used. So those are a lot of clippings. Okay, our next one's an acronyms. What an acronyms are and how you remember the difference between an acronym and abbreviation. An acronym is a word. It becomes a word. Okay? Abbreviations often don't. So some of these radar, scuba, PIN. Does anybody know what PIN stands for? Right. See, so you probably know. Zip code. Anybody know what zip code stood for originally? I think you know, Tenena, what?
Zone
Improvement. Zone improvement plan. Okay. So zip code's been in the language for so long now that hardly I know Tenena's the only person I know that knows what that means, and second language learners are good for that, okay? I didn't know what POTUS was. What is a POTUS? Or who is a POTUS? The president, and that's because it came out of West Wing, that TV series, where they always called him POTUS. And we were always teaching at night, and I never watched that. So I had never even heard that word, but now I see it everywhere. AWOL, I think we know what that means. And, yeah, and Arby's. Does anybody know what Arby's stands for?
America's roast beef, yes.
Yeah, oh, great. America's roast beef, yes, sir. We have someone who knows. That's great. And how do you know that? Interesting. You need to be. And the commercial, now they play it up every now and then, so you know where it came from. But, yeah, so that's the example of that. And there's their sign. Now you have the next one are abbreviations, where they're a lot like clipping. Well, it's even more clip. You just do the letters. RSVP means, yeah, and the thing that's interesting about RSVP, you really don't say it RP or anything. It just stays the letters. DOA, we know what that one is, right?
Borrowing, that's
Well, which one?
from French.
Oh, artist, yeah, it's been borrowed from French, right? It's borrowed first, and then we bring it in, and then we just take it from s'il vous plaît. DOA is dead on arrival. I have to tell about LOL. What does LOL mean? Laugh out loud. I thought when the first time I got that in an email, I meant lots of love. Why is this person signing off with lots of love? And then I found out you need to get with it, okay? So that's that one. We all know what ELL means, English language learner. R&B, oh yeah, what's R&B? Rhythm and blues, and you hear R&B much more than you ever hear the whole thing out. B&B, bed and breakfast. I always say B&B because I get bed and breakfast confused and mess it up. AKA, also known as, right? So you can see why we do these. DWI, if you DWI, you may end up DOA, right? So there's that one. JPEG is a new one. What's a JPEG? Everyone know what JPEG is? Does anybody remember what the J stands for? See, I can't remember. Do you remember, Kristen, what JPEG? So we've just taken whatever that J means and put it with PEG. Who did? Who knows?
No, I forgot.
I forgot. I have no clue what it means. So we've just lost the meaning. And this is a really interesting one. And I'll ask you to indicate by a show of hands. How many of you still say ASAP? How many of you say ASAP? About 50-50. It's becoming more moving into the category of the others where it becomes a word. Okay, so eventually probably ASAP will be pronounced ASAP and everybody will know what it means. Or they maybe be like me with LOL. Okay. One of the reasons that we can do text messaging and we have no problem with it is because we know how to do abbreviations and acronyms. It's just we know the language so well and the sounds that go with the letters and the numbers that we can just do this right away without even thinking. So 277818 BKSTR. What does that mean? Bookstore. Good. For massages or messages? Messages that save you dollars. Okay, so you see how we do it. We can also read license plates because of this system. This one is a QD pie, right? Back formation is a kind of process that is where we start out with one word and then that's one part of speech and we move it to another part of speech. So we start, usually in English, we start out with the nouns and then from the nouns, we form the verbs. You would think it'd be the other way, but if you look in the dictionary, it explains that usually we start with nouns. So television became televised, and then, okay, and priority became prioritize. Liaison became liaise? Liaise. I don't use that. Any of you use that word, liaise? Yeah, I don't use that one, so I don't know. Enthusiasm is enthused. Do any of you use enthuse? Some people do, yeah. Sermonize, okay. Teacher, this is an interesting one. Teacher came before teach, okay. So that's an example of back formation where it goes from one part. These all went from nouns to verbs. Okay, and here, happiness is a 50-incher. So it's incher, and they've made inches a noun, and they've turned it into a comparative, yeah. And they're talking about a fish, okay. So here's some examples of back formation.
This is a real IBM ad.
What are you guys doing?
We're ideating.
ID what? Ideating. What's that? Coming up with new ideas. Why don't you just call it that? This is different. We need to rethink the way we do things. Structure.
Process. We need to innovate.
How?
We haven't ideated that yet.
Good luck.
Thanks.
That's new. I haven't seen that one. That's great. So, this is Tenena's. He's going to do category shift.
Category shift is when you have a word and you use it for another category. In other words, you can have an adjective like empty and then turn it into a verb. You don't change the word. Or you can have butter and then you butter your toast. So that's for example, Google. We all use that word these days. And now it started as a noun, right? And then turned into a verb. I'm going to Google something. Okay. Can you think of any?
Skype.
Skype? Okay.
Facebook.
Facebook? Yeah. Very good. Yeah. You love it. You know what it means, right? It's like you feel like going on vacation. Okay. How about this one? You've written that too many teachers are ungoogleable. What do you mean? What do you mean by that, and why does it matter? The kids in our classroom are going to be Googled. They are going to be searched for on the web over and over again. The people I learned from one day on a day-to-day basis are Googleable. So what's going on here? Started with Google, and then we have a morpheme, or you can call it a prefix, and then we added another suffix here, a suffix here, which made it into an adjective. So you see there are many processes going on here. And here, we turned, as we said earlier, the noun into a verb. Same thing here. Derivation. Very good. Paired words. That's where you have two categories. On the left here, what happens is that you have kind of the repetition of the same thing, but you change the first consonant, like in helter-skelter, willy-nilly, bow wow. How about this one? What do you think it means? Slow motion. Very good. The second category is you have a change in the vowel. Second word. Hip hop, mishmash, wishy-washy, seesaw, ding dong. Okay. You know what this is? Any guesses? This used to be an amusement park. You know this story.
You know it too.
No, come on.
This particular ride in Great Britain is called a helter-skelter because when it goes, it's kind of like that ride we have that goes back and forth like this. I forgot what you call that, but it's very the motion is, there's a lot of motion to it, and I'll get all mixed up inside of it. So helter-skelter first was used for this ride, and then how do most of you know helter-skelter? Where did it first appear in popular culture? Yeah, in a rock song, right? It became there's a Beatles song called Helter Skelter. And then it took on a very negative tone back in the early 70s when Charles Manson, very good, yeah, when he did all the killing and they wrote Helter Skelter all over the walls in blood. So it has a very interesting, but you get the sense of chaos, total chaos, nothing holds together, confusion, almost craziness.
Yeah, it is because, the slide was a spiral one, and it would come down on a mat. So it created that sense.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Grubhub. What's going on here? We know what grub is, right? What does it mean? And hub? The place. Yeah, so, yeah, we have a compound here. Scale change. This is when we add a prefix or suffix to a word to show either size or dimension, like droplet, mega, mall, hanky, supersize. This one we hear quite a bit these days. Nanosecond, microwave, or micromanage. Okay. How about this one? Hanky. Any ideas? Yeah, small, because the IE makes it small. Very good. Smoothie. That's an interesting one. What happens with smoothies? What happened to the food? Yeah. Okay. Why is it that if you have mashed potatoes, would we call it mashed potato smoothies? Why not? Exactly. Something to do with drinking. Yeah. Okay, very good. Let us take a look at some of these. Who didn't know this word shellacking before? Anybody?
That's what you did to wood, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know it till today. My junk. That one I just learned to do. How about refugiate? Examples of blending there, right?
Isn't double dip ice cream?
It is an ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or it's when you take a tortilla and go, eat it and go back in.
Okay. Multiple processes. This is when all the processes we've talked about so far, you can combine them in many ways. Example, when we go to the store, we may say, I'm going to the deli section. Deli is a borrowed word from German, and then we clipped it. We only use deli. Snowball is another example. We started as a compound word, and then we can make it a category shift, turning into a verb. Internet. It's an interesting one, isn't it? It comes from international network. Did you know that? Yeah. Okay. Let's take the last one, since we've been hearing that a lot in the media. Cyberbullying. We have a blend here, and then we turn it into a verb. Yeah. And then by adding the ing, we turn it into a gerund. So, what's going on here with this picture? Make veggies less vegetable. Any ideas? Huh? Veggies is what? What? Huh? Yeah, it's vegetables, but we clipped it and blended it, right? And vegetably, we made it into an adjective. Okay. Would someone read this?
Two of us?
Yeah.
Two of us.
What are you doing?
I'm editing the dictionary. I'm crossing out words we don't need anymore, replacing them with ones we do. The first to get the axe was fortnight.
What's wrong with fortnight?
Unnecessary. Unnecessary, normal people say 2 weeks. Its only purpose is to make pompous people feel pompous.
Since when is pomposser a word?
Since it replaced fortnight.
You are not replacing fortnight.
You are not replacing fortnight. Wow. You're sounding pomposser and pomposser. So, what's going on here? Yeah, we will call it fortnight. We'll see. No. And I'm going to pass the mic now to Kristen for classroom maps.
That's it on our 12 types of new words in English, and we'd like to give you a chance to ask us any questions that you might have. Did anyone think of a word that they never realized how it was put together when you were seeing this presentation?
Internet.
What is it?
Internet. I didn't
Internet.
It was international.
Internet, yes, international network. Somebody else?
No, I had a question. I wanted to know, once we start using the word, well, how do we copyright the word, or how do people copyright
No,
certain
we
words?
don't.
We don't use them all the time.
We don't. It's free as the wind. She asked how we copyright the word once we start to use it. You don't make money off words. Just doesn't happen. Well, I guess you could trademark a process or something, but yeah, they're just, that's democracy in action, and they just get picked up by people or they don't.
Just like if you've read Findle, how many of you know the story of Findle? That's what happens. You start using the word, and before you know it, everybody's using it.
Well, obviously companies trademark, like Xerox, nobody can use Xerox but everybody uses Xerox, right? So that's the idea where it becomes democratized. They just take it over. But in print, you always have to acknowledge them, I think.
Any more questions or comments? Very much for coming.
Thanks.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you again to the new library for bringing us.